Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Naya Daur. I'm Rabia Mahmood. Today on our show, we are going to be doing this is a special episode just to start with. As you know, that we keep on documenting human rights abuses or speaking of documentation of human rights abuses and repression in Pakistan. And we've also raised human rights and social justice concerns, which are region based in South Asia. We spoke in detail about repression of women and Afghans in Afghanistan a couple of months back, and we keep on highlighting the issues in South Asia as well. But today, what we're doing is that we're going to all the way to Palestine and speak of the ongoing repression of civil society activists and human rights defenders who are from Palestine and are based there. This particular show is basically about these organizations seven organizations in Palestine, which were raided by the Israeli forces in August 2022. Just a couple of months back, there were really brutal raids on offices of seven organizations, which are basically civil society organizations that document human rights abuses, war crimes, and crimes against humanity taking place in Palestine by the Israeli forces. Out of these seven organizations, six were also designated terrorist organizations by the Israeli government last year in October, that is 2021 October. Of course, when that happened, there was a lot of significant backlash, if not a lot, by particular human rights organizations, the United Nations, international organizations like Human Rights Watch, and a number of others. And at the same time, there was also over the last 1 year, we've seen that there has been condemnation and questions raised by some diplomatic missions and some international, some countries as well, which includes some of the member states of the European Union Parliament. However, of course the occupation is ongoing occupation of Palestine is an ongoing issue, and it's brutal as it is. Why is it that the targeting of defenders and civil society activists so brutal? Of course, because these organizations are the ones which are supporting the people, and yet at the same time bringing forth evidence of war crimes and human rights brutalities which the Palestinian people are subjected to, and they give this legitimacy to the plight of the Palestinian people. Of course, the effort is to smear them, but also to block their funding, so that they are unable to do the important work that they are doing. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Rula Jamal, who is the head of monitoring and documentations at Al-Haq. Al-Haq is one of the six organizations which were designated terrorists and also raided in August 2022, sorry. And their office is based in Ramallah city, which I believe is the de facto capital of the occupied West Bank. There has been some reporting on this, and there has been video evidence of the raid and how the raid took place. We'll talk about all of this, but we're very happy and to host Rula today, and also to have her speak of the atrocities and the work that they're doing. Of course, if you want to read up more about what happened, you can go online and look at the campaign called #StandWithThe6, and a lot of material which basically speaks of what happened to these organizations, which pop up just for those who use social media. So, Rula, thank you so much for joining us. To start with, if you could tell our viewers, about the Naya Daur viewers, about what specifically does Al-Haq do. We do know that some of these organizations are the ones that document violations against children prisoners, Palestinian children, document and count the number of children that are killed by Israeli forces, speak for the rights of women and farmers in Palestine. So what kind of investigations does Al-Haq do? And and also about what exactly happened in August.
Thank you very much, Rabia, for having me today. It's always a pleasure to speak to human rights defenders all over the world, especially in Asia. It's an honor. So basically, what has happened in August is that Al-Haq's offices were raided by the Israeli occupation forces 3 a.m. in the morning. What happened is that the offices were vandalized, and a lot of equipment was basically, when they went through equipments and also our servers in relation to entering every single office. The offices that were closed or locked were broken down, so doors were broken. And it's just the entire fact that about 25 to 30 soldiers entered into our organization by itself is an act of dominance that the Israeli occupation continuously try to use against anyone who is documenting and who is advocating for the rights of Palestinians. This takes me to why and what does Al-Haq do. Al-Haq, it means, and I'm sure maybe in Urdu it means the same thing, the right or justice. And Al-Haq is the first human rights organization in the Middle East. It has been established since 1979. Its main work and its reason of why it was established is because there was a huge gap of non-existing professional bodies that documented violations that were ongoing and has been ongoing since the 40s. So Al-Haq, a bunch of lawyers came together, female and male lawyers in the 70s, and put together an organization that is basically, primarily it was established to document and monitor violations that were committed by the Israeli occupation forces. But then, of course, at the same time, it used this documentation to do legal analysis or do the legal analysis based on the documentation that was done by field researchers and lawyers. The documentation we do is considered to be one of the best in terms of situations such as the occupation of Palestine, because this documentation is done on legal standards, which means that it can be used in international tribunals, courts, and also the information is definitely used for advocacy, whether it's legal advocacy or political advocacy. So this is basically what Al-Haq does. Now, after the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, Al-Haq continued to document violations that the Palestinian Authority forces also commit. And this is a reflection of our commitment to document violations that are committed by any perpetrator against the Palestinian people. So what we document is related to who are the duty bearers, who are the people that are supposed to either protect or not harm Palestinians, and this is where our interventions became very important, and to basically serve accountability.
Thank you, Rula. And also, if you could just tell us, expand a bit on what are the and how many violations are there that Al-Haq has been documenting? What are some of the examples of those violations? And also, specifically, of course, we'll try and show our viewers the video, which is available online as well of the raid, but as to why the colonizer did what it did in terms of and how the Al-Haq and other organizations were targeted, and the agenda behind declaring Al-Haq and other organizations terrorists basically is to also have an impact on or to is basically to defund is to smear and also to defund. If you can expand a bit on that. Yes.
Sure. Let me start with the first question, and hopefully I'll remember all of the questions. So basically,
I'll ask again.
Yeah, okay, great. So basically, the violations that we document exhaustively the violations of killings and demolitions. These are the main two violations that we document exhaustively, meaning that we document every and each case since the 70s until this day. Other violations are the amount of the types of violations that Al-Haq has documented, unfortunately, come up to 300 different types of violations, including violations that are against political rights, cultural rights, economic rights, environmental rights. So these are the different kinds of rights that are violated in Palestine, and it is very, of course, systematic. And we try to document every single violation, but unfortunately, we do not have the capacity to document each type of violation exhaustively. And of course, as I said, regardless of the perpetrator, we also document the violations. In relation to why those organizations were considered or were designated as terrorist organizations, and to be very clear, Al-Haq is one of the organizations, as you of course mentioned at the beginning. There are other 5 organizations that were also designated as terrorist organizations, and all of these are actually organizations that have been established since the 80s, mid 80s, and so they are very prominent. They are very professional in the work they do, and they cover many topics. Children you mentioned, women you mentioned, and farmers' rights, in addition to Palestinian political prisoners topic, in addition to Bisan, which is a research center and study center under occupation, basically. So you can imagine all the spectrum of organizations covering different categories in the society. They were all designated. So you can imagine also the amount of damage that is being done if these organizations are indeed, and I will get into the implications of the designations, but if they indeed are going to be shut down entirely and staff continue to be attacked, look at the amount of people that will lose the types of services and the voices that we try to amplify through our work. So the implications that we anticipate and that are in relation to the Israeli arbitrary laws and the anti-terror laws is that every single act, every single action that we do is now considered to be an act of terror. And so even me now speaking to you here, advocating about what happened, is considered to be an act of terror according to the Anti-Terror Act of Israel. And so it is very serious, and it is very exhaustive. It extends to every single action we do, conferences, reports, and they, of course, claim that we are part of the PFLP. It's a political party that is designated as a terrorist party. But of course, that by itself is also absurd, because almost all the Palestinian political parties are considered to be terrorist parties or organizations. And of course, we as Al-Haq, we are an organization we are lawyers working with the international frameworks, the legal international frameworks. We have been doing this for a very long time. And so our work is firmly, and this is also shown by the amount of support that you also mentioned in the introduction, is that we have friends, allies, partners, donors from many, many different countries around the world. We have managed to establish a very strong presence internationally. Now, one of the implications as well, which is very serious, is that we could be there has been travel bans for some of our colleagues. We have one colleague that is currently in administrative detention, and this is extremely serious. He has been in administrative detention since March this year. His name is lawyer and human rights defender Salah Hamouri. Salah has been in detention since March. He is on administrative detention. And for those who don't know what that means, it's basically a detention without any charges and without any trial. So basically, the persons are arrested and detained without knowing what are the charges, why are they detained, and for how long. And usually the administrative detentions are indefinite. So it is, so Salah, for example, his administrative detention order, which was initially 3 months, has been renewed twice already. The next administrative detention order ends on the 4th of December, and we still don't know what will happen to him. Salah is a lawyer working at Ad-Damir. He's a human rights defender, and he defends political prisoners. So look at the irony of now having him also detained for the work that he does. So this is one very concrete example of what implications and complications could happen to us. We have two colleagues that are banned from traveling. Both are general directors of two of the organizations that were designated. And of course, as you mentioned, which is most importantly, is that there is an attempt to try to dry our finances. And you can imagine drying the finances would definitely mean that the work of the organizations and the employees would stop. And so why are they doing this now, and why us, is very much related to the fact that the Israeli occupation has been attacking us, Rabia, for very, very long. This is not a new type of attack. It is systematic and it is continuous, and it comes along a line of attacks against the Palestinian civil society, because, as you very correctly said in the introduction, it is to silence. It is to silence anyone who documents and brings out the violations in a very proper manner to the world that could actually be used to hold the perpetrator accountable. So we are currently in a situation where we think that the Israeli occupation took a political decision. This is not a legal procedure. And the political decision was not to silence us anymore, but actually to execute the organizations. Because once you designate them as terrorist organizations and then you go on to raid and close the offices, you're very clearly saying you have to shut down and you have to shut up. And this is unfortunately where we are.
Thank you so much, Rula. You have very concisely and articulately explained the situation on the ground to us and for our viewers. Salah Hamouri is also one of the human rights defenders whose campaign is being, highlighted and is part of the campaign by international human rights monitors as well, and not just the United Nations Special Rapporteurs, but Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. They're campaigning on his case, but there has not been any development, if I'm correct in saying that. So a couple of months back, I believe so it's justice for Salah.net. Rula has reminded us. So I believe in around April, there was a call by the UN special mandates, procedures, and also over 100 organizations globally, if not in April, but earlier this year, to let Al-Haq and other organizations work and for the funding to be resumed. Can you speak about that, as if that has been resumed to any degree?
Well, actually, we have not lost funding. Because our partners, allies, states, no one has confirmed or adopted the designations to be legal or substantial. And this is very important. So what the Israeli occupation government did is, immediately after they designated our organizations, they went on a lobby tour to different states, including the US and many European countries, saying that this organization is designated, and they had a so-called evidence file. Now, the states that has looked into this so-called evidence file came out after exhaustive and extensive search and research in this file, came out with a result that there is no substantiated evidence and that they will not abide or buy into the claims of the Israeli occupation. And this, of course, led, or, basically, the result is that our partnership with our donors and our allies continue. And it is basically some of them, even there is financial support, there is political support, there is legal support from different NGOs, and also states.
Okay, so and it's the same for Al-Haq and other organizations as well, like all 6.
I unfortunately cannot speak about the financial situation of other organizations. It also targets our allies. It also targets our partners, and this is again shows the brutality of such laws and the arbitrariness of such laws and the misuse of such regulations that extends also not only to the organizations but also to their partners. And by the way, in relation to what you mentioned about the UN, we have of course approached the Special Rapporteur on Anti-Terrorism and Human Rights, and the Special Rapporteur issued an opinion on the Israeli Anti-Terror Act of 2016. And this study showed that the law is not compliant with human rights regulations and human rights laws. And this is a very important opinion. I can definitely share it with you after the call, because it also shows that, this misuse of anti-terror acts is becoming a very widespread and very, very concerning issue, not only for us as a human rights organization in Palestine, but also around the globe. And this really needs to stop. And we really need to be together fighting against these kinds of laws that are basically aimed at silencing anyone who documents and criticizes violations against civilians and against people under oppression, etc.
Yeah, Rula, unfortunately, although these are very different contexts, but even in Pakistan, anti-terrorism laws and are used against human rights defenders, and police cases on fabricated charges like on sedition and ATA, which is the Anti-Terrorism Act in Pakistan, against human rights defenders. And in fact, like journalists and grassroots activists have been registered, and it is used, and there is an abuse of this act and or law here as well. And it is something which takes place in other countries, but where, with regards to, of course, Israel and Palestine, we're speaking of a very specific, we're speaking of an ongoing occupation of a country. Bringing it up because that's something that Pakistanis who work in this space can relate to and understand. So how is documentation of war crimes or rights abuses taking place now? What's the current situation like in the country or in the occupied territories? And for instance, like, how is it for women human rights defenders? What kind of surveillance are they subjected to?
So basically, the work is, we continue to work. This has been our motto from the beginning of the designation. We came together and we thought that, yes, now the actions against us are becoming on a different scale. So we are used to the attacks, but of course now it's on a total different level. As I said, it is execution. It is not anymore silencing and not anymore shrinking space. This is basically no space at all. But our approach has always been that we will continue the work, that it seems that we're actually doing the right thing. And this is why we are being targeted so brutally and so arbitrarily. So our colleagues are continuing the work. We continue to document the violations. For example, this year has been one of the most severe years. The casualties and the amount of people killed, may they rest in peace, have been extremely high. This is a drastic change in violence, and there has been even insinuations and calls from the government of the Israeli colonizers to widespread the killings and also to be weaponized even civilian settler colonialists. So we are seeing, and we're very alarmed of how the situation and the drastic deterioration in the situation is moving to a place that is extremely scary. So of course our work is now more important than ever. It is, of course, we work under very difficult circumstances, even without the designation. So you can imagine now being designated is a different level. Our offices are open, our reports are still coming in, our legal analysis is still coming in, advocacy tours, advocacy events, our interviews, interaction with the media, our interaction with our donors, allies, etc. We are still continuing the work. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, it is extremely, the psychological distress is very high. We are all, at the end of the day, humans. We all have fears and we all have families to worry about because the Israeli occupation tends to also intimidate not only a human rights defender, but also the families of the human rights defender. You mentioned women. So one of the attacks and one of the harassments that human rights defenders, especially women human rights defenders, faces is, for example, one of the organizations is the Union for Women Committees, and the head of that organization is a female. She, the day after the raid, or actually the same day of the raid, because the raid happened at 3 a.m., she was called at around 7 a.m. in the morning to be summoned for an interrogation by the Israeli intelligence. She answered the call, but she was sleeping. So I think it was 6 or 7, and she was summoned to be in at around 9:30. And then around 9 a.m., she was not at the interrogation center. So the general actually called her 14-year-old daughter. He called her telling her, your mother is summoned and she's not here. And you go and you wake her up and you tell her to be here. So of course, the daughter, extremely terrified, goes to her mother saying, Mom, you have this call, etc. And she answers the call, and he told her, if you are not here within the next half an hour, we will destroy your entire private life and your family. She goes to the interrogation. In the interrogation, she is threatened by using her private family and her children and husband as points of pressure. Other female colleagues specifically working at this organization were also called and harassed, sexual harassments, that if they do not stop their work, there will be scandals, they will ruin their private lives. And in a conservative society such as the Palestinian society, these things are taken very seriously. And of course, we as women human rights defenders, we face different levels of difficulties, and it's not always very easy for a woman to be a human rights defender out there in the field, in situations where gender roles are supposed to be in a different manner. So already we have those layers of complications and difficulties, and so to also add on that sexual harassment by the Israeli occupation forces, it is very serious. But of course, this woman, alongside alongside the other women working in these organizations, including myself and my colleagues, we also understand those types of harassments and those types of pressure points. And we are trying to provide each other with as much support and solidarity we can, in addition to trying to be very, very also close to the community so that we have the protection needed. But again, it is definitely another level of challenges that we are trying to face and to deal with.
So you've spoken about the kind of international support that Al-Haq and other organizations have. I think the fact that Al-Haq has established a forensic investigation unit in collaboration with the forensic architecture is an example of that. Can you briefly speak about that work? Also, because I think it's the first of its kind collaboration in the Middle East. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, this is one of the things that we're really proud of, because this unit, the Forensic Architecture Investigation Unit, was established after the designation. So basically, we established it at the beginning of this year, and we were designated in October last year. So this is again shows our commitment to continue to grow and to continue to adopt tools that are out there that could serve our mission and our vision to bring justice to the Palestinian people, to our people. So the Forensic Architecture Investigation Unit was established in cooperation with the Forensic Architecture that is based in London under the University of Goldsmith. We have had collaborations before on different other investigations, such as, for example, the investigation of the killing of Ahmad Ariqat that happened in Bethlehem last year. And since about 2 years ago, we have been assessing and designing the establishment of this unit, because we believe that introducing new methodologies into documentation is very important, especially that the investigations and the final products of the investigations are considered to be secondary evidence in courts. So that's very important. That's very new, and we want to be pioneers in this field. And as you correctly said, it is the first of its kind in the Middle East. So this is the first unit in the Middle East. We have a team of really brilliant architects and designers that are working on the investigations. And this year alone, they managed to produce three investigations. You're welcome to enter into our website that I wrote in the chat, and also to look at the results of the investigations. One of the last was the investigation we did on the killing of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was killed in an Israeli, while covering an Israeli raid on the camp of Jenin in Jenin city. So this unit uses different interdisciplinary sciences, including, of course, architecture and law, and it does a spatial analysis, audio analysis, to recreate a crime scene, so that basically people could actually see visually the crime scene and what has happened in a certain moment on a certain day. How did the crime actually take place? It is the findings are quite significant in those investigations that we actually managed to publish, and it actually does show a high level of accuracy and proficiency in the analysis that is being done, of course, because there is the use of expertise on different levels in each investigation, depending on what is the topic of the investigation. So yes, please, I invite your audience to take a look at this. It is both impressive and pretty cool, to be honest, despite the fact that the topics are very brutal.
is very brutal. Yes, it's alhaq.org. If anyone wants to visit, we can show the website on the screen. Thank you so much for speaking to us, and of course explaining everything which has happened and the work that you and your other colleagues do in Palestine in documenting war crimes and rights abuses. It's been very informative and hearing from you and all these insights straight from the ground in Palestine, and how the work of documentation of rights abuses and in are taking place at the moment in Palestine, and what the activists and civil society are going through. Thanks so much for speaking to Naya Daur. We look forward to following what happens with Al Haq and other organizations, and how, and of course, some of the work that your organization and others are doing. And thanks to our viewers for watching today's episode. We'll see you again with another episode soon. Khuda Hafiz.